Well, good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you to the Better Together Facebook Live show. I'm Barb, and this Better Together Facebook Live show is where we gather together. We do it every Tuesday at 4:30 Eastern, and we talk about our hopes, our dreams, our worries, our waistlines. And my friends, it doesn't matter where you come from or what you've been through. Here on Better Together is where we find the hope, the help, and the practical next steps, as well as laughter that we need so we can get better together. And I'm laughing because backstage, I've been talking with today's guest. And frankly, I was just trying not to tear up from laughing so hard. And I'm excited about today's conversation, and you'll get a chance to meet her in just a moment. If you're joining me today, just hop in and say hi, Terry Bryan. So glad to have you with us today. And for those of you who are watching live or on the replay, this Facebook Live show is an interactive experience. We invite you to join the conversation with us. We love asking questions that invite you to share with us where you're at. So today, before I get ready to introduce our guest, today we're talking about adulting. Does anybody like talking about adulting? Our icebreaker question for today is this. My fabulous producer, Tabitha, is back there working hard. So, friends, if you're watching, jump into the comments today. And what is the hardest part about adulting for you? Today, we're talking about adulting. It's a topic that really is about the millennials in our lives, but let's face it. As adults, we haven't solved everything yet. And so what's hardest? Is it B or A, job or work problems? B, finances? C, exhaustion? That's real. D, relationships? Or E, all of the above? So jump into the comments and tell us what is the difficult part about adulting for you. Drop in one of those letters. And Tabitha, go ahead and leave this up because I got a little bit of a story to share for you while we're doing that. Speaking of adulting, earlier today, I was online and I had a chance to see an IG story from a woman named Lori. And if you're joining us, I want to welcome you to the Better Together Facebook Live. Today, we're talking about adulting for Jesus. And Lori tagged me in her IG story. That rhymes, yeah. And she was really struggling with things in her life that she couldn't control. And the thing that Lori was trying to figure out was how to let go of control. So she Googled surrendered. And when she Googled surrendered, what popped up was my new devotional. And this is devotional called Surrendered, 40 Devotions to Help You Let Go and Live Like Jesus. And what I loved was she said, Barb, I got it, and it was life-changing. And the reason why she said that was because she needed help surrendering. And so if that's you today, I want you to know that the Surrender Devotional, it's got 40 brief devotions about the places where we struggle to let go, like letting go of worrying, letting go of overthinking. And you can grab onto those encouraging devotionals, and the goal is that they will help you let go and live like Jesus. And so that was a fun story. Now, back to our icebreaker question today. What is the hardest part about adulting? Kristin, thank you for joining us. She said, balancing daily responsibilities and self-care, or E. That is so real. Kristin, thank you for sharing that with us. As we talk about adulting for Jesus today, I actually want to jump in and share our guest with you for today. This is a friend of mine, and I'm excited. Whenever I ask our guests to send in their bio, I get all kinds of bios, but today I want to introduce you to my guest and friend, Kristin Weber. You'll see Kristin's photo in a moment. She's going to explain that accordion. And when Kristin sent in her bio, Kristin and I tour together for the Aspire Women's events. We've been on the road together. I have seen her perform. We've had long conversations in the car. We have sat together quietly for many hours in the car because she's an introvert and I'm half introverted. And so we're friends because we both know not to talk to each other. But Kristin's bio says that she is a comedian, an author, a speaker. And this is why probably I love her the most, is that she is a Chipotle enthusiast. And so Kristin is the author of the new book, just came out yesterday, Adulting for Jesus. And I love the subtitle. It's a book about purpose, trusting God, and obviously burritos. This book released yesterday on February 1st. It hit #1 on Amazon in the teen and young adult Christian inspirational, as well as hit #1 on Christian leadership. So we're going to have a great conversation today. Would you please welcome to the Better Together Facebook Live, my friend, Kristin Weber.
Hey, Barb.
Kristin, it is good to see you. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Well, my cheeks hurt because I'm still laughing from our backstage conversation.
Yes. Yeah, it was quite the conversation that nobody who's watching is going to get to hear.
That's right. That's right. But we did an icebreaker question, and that icebreaker question was, what was the hardest part about adulting? And so, Kristin, I want you, Tabitha, go ahead and toss that back up again. And Kristin, when you think about, for you, the hardest part of adulting, A, job and work problems, B, finances, C, exhaustion, D, relationship, E, all of the above, which one is you?
Ooh, gosh, I think it's E, all of the above, because all of the issues from all 4 of those categories tend to overlap. And then I feel like we get the problems from, because each of those categories has their specific challenges that you can hit. And I feel like you hit them all at the same time. It all happens at once, right? Like if things are going, like you'll hit all of the problems all at one time in all of those categories. It seems like they feed off of each other. But and then the exhaustion hits in from having to deal with all the adulting responsibilities from all the other categories.
Oh, sure. Which is why I'm so glad you're here today, because today we're talking about this idea of adulting for Jesus. And I love how you shared yours. Anita Billion, thank you for joining us. Anita, for her, jumped in and she said for her, it's D, relationships. And it just, adulting is hard, Kristin. And so your new book, Adulting for Jesus, how did that whole thing come about?
It came about, I got the idea for the book just from talking to people. Actually, a lot of it was after Aspire events or after shows. I would talk to the audience and people come up to you. And so a lot of, I think just because of my age and the books that I was selling at the time were for a little bit younger, like teenage audience. So I'd get some younger girls that would come up. And in talking to them, like the 20s and mid 30s, age demographic, there was a recurring theme in the conversation. And it almost always started with them asking, when did you know that comedy was your calling? And how did you know that was your passion? And everybody wanted to know about calling. And which was weird because I don't feel like stand-up comedy is my calling. Writing, I would say, is more my calling. Stand-up was just something that kind of came out of writing. But everybody really wanted this. They were all searching for this kind of all-fulfilling thing that they could live with that would just provide that satisfaction in life. And when they saw me doing comedy, they just assumed, oh, she found her calling. She must be happy 100% of the time. And so then they're like, I'm trying to find my calling. I'm trying to find what I'm supposed to do with my life. It just kind of came out of these constant conversations with people. They're just searching for that one thing that'll satisfy them. And I thought, this is the hardest part of adulting. I think is chasing things that we think are going to provide that ultimate fulfillment, and really only Jesus is going to provide that. And if we're really honest, we're not going to feel that full fulfillment until the new heavens and new earth, when God comes back and makes everything right again, because we're still living in a sinful world and broken bodies and broken minds and hearts and all of that. So even though we have that promise of eternity where things will be 100% perfect, right now it's that shadow, it's that hope. So I am hesitant to even promise that you can find out that feeling. You have the promise and you have the hope in Jesus for sure. And that helps so much. But it's just this, like, life is hard, and it's it's going to be hard because the world is it's very fallen and very broken, and we're constantly fighting battles in all of those areas that even if one of those areas would be easy, I think everything else would be good, but it seems like it's challenging all across the board. So.
Which is such, that is all of our reality. And yet there is a perspective that you've been able to craft out of the difficulties. And because you and I have traveled together, and while I don't see you often, there have been some life experiences that I've been able to hear about from you or observe happen from afar, where you've been able to look at what is hard and difficult about adulting, and yet be able to look at it and at a point be able to create humor around it. When you think about being a comedian and in a world such as ours, what is it about comedy that you have enjoyed being able to offer to the world?
I like comedy because it offers hope in a way that not a lot of other things do. The fact that we can laugh at the struggle and laugh at things that are hard shows that there's a light. And I have to be careful that I always provide, when I say the bad news, that like this fulfillment thing that we're looking for, we're seeking something that we probably can't experience until heaven. It's really depressing. So you can't give them that without the good news that this is going to end. Like every trial has an expiration date. We can be excited and joyful and hopeful in our circumstances, no matter if they're good or bad, because we know what we're promised, and because Jesus came and took the penalty for our sins on the cross. I mean, that's good news, and it's called good news for a reason. So I don't want to leave people too depressed. So I think the humor is a result of that hope that we have. And I think it's Michael Jr. is a comedian, and he says that like the laughter is a tangible proof of hope. And I just think that's the best way to put it, because we can laugh at things because they're not going to be forever. And we know that. And that's, so why not try to extract as much humor from the weird, bizarre, sad things that are in life? It's, nice break from crying.
Right. Oh, yeah. Well, let me say hi to Marty Haas. Thank you for joining us today on the Better Together Facebook Live. I hope that you are sticking around, because we're talking with Kristin Weber. She is the author of the new book, Adulting for Jesus. And Kristin, a little bit ago, Anita Billion, she said when you were talking about just the importance of good news, that was so very true, and that there is good news, but also humor is good. And so the thing about Adulting for Jesus is you're writing it for millennials, and you're writing it to be able to encourage them, but also there are lessons for us who've been doing adulting for a while. So what I would love for you right now is to talk particularly about millennials. When we think about millennials, what are some of the first impressions that people have when we're talking about millennials?
So when people are talking about millennials who are not millennials, it's that they're lazy, they're too soft, they're easily offended. And I'm always like, we are not. They can't manage their money well. Let's see, what other one? Snowflake is the one that we hear. And I'm like, have you seen those little close-ups of snowflakes and how beautiful and intricate they are? It's like, that's a compliment. So basically we're just incompetent as a generation, and we're just whiny. And I'm just like, gee, who raised us? So those are the things about them. I think if you were to ask a millennial what the qualities of our generations are, I think it's that we're overwhelmed, we're anxious, we feel incompetent, like we don't know what we're doing. A lot of us, we are very well aware that we're probably getting it all wrong, and we have memes on our social media to prove it, because that's our main form of self-expression, is the meme. And I think a lot of millennials are very quick to say they don't have it figured out, whereas I think older generations, and I'm going to count you as a millennial, Barb, older generations would be very hesitant to admit that they don't have it figured out. Like, are you good? Are you there? did we lose Barb? Okay, I'll just keep talking until Barb comes back. But like older generations would be very quick to, or be less quick to say that they don't have it figured out. Because when I was testing like different subtitles for the book, one of them was finding purpose and contentment. Oh, there you are. You're back.
I know. I was like, well, that's new. Okay. So thank you for carrying the show. Keep on
you're
going.
Welcome. It's my pleasure. I was talking and then I was like, Barb hasn't changed her expression in a few seconds. I was like, either she just is really happy about what I'm saying or we need to call a doctor or the computer froze. So I'm glad it was the latter.
Yes. So yes, please continue.
No, I was just saying that millennials are very quick to admit that we have no clue what we're doing, which actually was the original subtitle of the book, was finding purpose and joy when you have no clue what you're doing. Every millennial, because they tested the different subtitles with a review audience, every single millennial was like, I'd read that book. I don't know what I'm doing. Every person like Gen X and boomers who read that was like, we wouldn't read that book. We don't know what we're doing. And I was like, wow, what a clear, concise difference of the generations that, but I think about like the adults I knew growing up, they all had to pretend they had it together. Nobody could admit that they were like struggling so much on the inside. And so I think the pendulum just swung and now we like over talk about everything. It's like my mom's generation didn't talk about anything. They just held it all inside. And then now we're like, talk about everything. And everyone's like, please hold some of that inside.
Yeah. That is a huge difference. I mean, I'm the mom of 3 adult millennials. The second or the third one is probably technically a Gen Z. But I mean, and I'm not substantially older than you, but I still was part of a group of time when we had to know what we were doing. And it was irresponsible to not know what we were doing. And that is a dramatic change. And so in some ways, I think adults who fall into my generation, we've made it not a safe environment for millennials to feel safe going, hey, we want to ask some questions because there was a high expectation. You should know what you're doing.
Right. And I mean, like both of my parents, both their parents are, or at least my mom, like both her parents work. She was a latchkey kid. She had to figure things out earlier. And that, I mean, my parents did a good job. So if they're watching, y'all did great. But they just they made all my appointments for me. They took care of like taking my car. And I just didn't have to do all of the stuff that you do when you're an adult until much later than they had to do it. So I'm still, doing it and learning how to do it. But a lot of millennials were just like 10 years behind. So I guess like that's what they say, that the 30s is the new 20s.
Ah, I like it.
Well, skill set, but.
In skill set. Well, in the book, you do talk about 4 specific struggles that millennials have. And before we talk about those 4 specific struggles, in your book, Adulting for Jesus, what is the main takeaway that you want readers to come away with in the book? Because you're writing it for millennials, but my audience, they're going to be a lot of moms and grandmas. And so listening, guys, this is the book to buy your granddaughters and grandsons. I'm just telling you that. But what is the takeaway message?
The takeaway message would be that God can use you even when you don't have it figured out. So because we tend to think, okay, once I get my act together, once I have this figured out, once I feel fulfilled, then God can actually use me in my adulting. And that's not true. He is using you and shaping you and walking with you even before you have anything figured out. So the things that we think that we need to feel fulfilled as an adult, so like the perfect marriage or the perfect job or the perfect 2.4 kids, those things, well, they can fulfill you seasonally for a little bit. They're not going to be what brings you ultimate joy. It's only that understanding that God is working everything for your good and his glory. I mean, that's where your ultimate understanding of, or where you can get joy in your adulting. And that you don't have to have it all figured out. God loves every generation. Every generation thinks the one coming up behind them is ruining humanity as we know it. I even say this in the book, like my grandmother, when when my uncle brought home a Beatles album to my grandmother, she said that this is demon music and it's feeding their drug habit. And then now that's wholesome, family-friendly music, but because it was new and unfamiliar, it was automatically kind of put in this category of this is going to ruin everything. And so now, like, the music that I hear, 13, 14-year-olds listening to, I'm like, that's terrible. I was like, this is going to ruin society. And I was like, but then my grandma said that about the Beatles. So I think it's a good book for even if you're just trying to understand what's going on in the mind of your millennial and Gen Z adult kids. Just before you give it to them, glance through it so you can just kind of see what our unique problems are, which it sounds like you're going to bring that up.
Absolutely. And so if you're joining me live or on the replay, I'm talking with Kristin Weber. She's the author of the new book, Adulting for Jesus. And you said there are 4 challenges that millennials are facing. And the very first challenge is comfort addiction. Can you talk briefly about that?
Yes. So one of the things that I talk about in the book is that unlike my parents and grandparents who kind of were born into a little bit more hardship and had to work toward comfort, a lot of millennials, not all of them, but a lot of them were born into comfort, born into this higher standard. And so we've kind of grown up with the idea that life should be easy with a few hard moments, when in reality, life is hard. The easy moments are the exception. And while older generations learn that younger, we're now learning that in our 20s and 30s. So this comfort, like not just physical comfort, but just kind of being safe and sheltered from, like we've just kind of, some of us have lived in a bubble. And again, not all of us, but we've just been used to a certain level of comfort. And then when we go out on our own, and you have to kind of re-earn that level of comfort if you had the big screen TV and the couches and all of that. And then suddenly it's like, well, I have a bare apartment. This is not fun. So you either go into a lot of debt to reattain that standard of comfort, or you think you're doing something wrong because you look on Instagram and everybody else has this beautifully furnished apartment and this wonderful Pinterest board of things that they've done to their place. And you're like, mine just has a beanbag chair and my laptop connected to a screen that I got at Goodwill. So we've just had to adjust that. Okay, life, you have to earn the comfort. But when you do, you appreciate it more. So.
Love it.
I think.
Well, so the second struggle is then instant gratification. And I mean, as I'm listening to these, the roots of some of these come from parents. So instant gratification.
Yeah. And not just parents, but like, I kind of straddle I am close to being what's called a zennial, which means I have a foot in the the Gen X world, because I remember VCRs and having to record things. And so it's like we used to have to wait a full week to watch the next episode of a show. And then if you missed it, until it re-ran on some obscure cable network, a year later. Well, now you can watch like the entire series at the press of a button, and then you can have snacks on your doorstep within minutes, through Instacart. We just don't have to wait for a lot. And then we don't even have to wait for information. You just have to go to the library and go through the little card catalog thing. And now it's just on your phone, although who knows if it's actually accurate that what you're getting, but you can look up and feel fairly confident that you're getting some sort of information. We just don't have to wait for anything. So when you tell someone who's never had to wait for all these little things, suddenly this big thing like fulfillment in relationships or satisfaction in your job, we don't want to wait for it. We're like, it should be instant or it's not right. Where a lot of those take time to build and to grow.
That's such an important thing to remember, particularly in communicating with people that we know and love who are millennials or Gen Zers, and just going, their regular everyday culture is not setting them up well for being patient with the hardest things to get in life, relationships and things. That's really eye-opening. Number 3 is distractions. How is distractions a struggle for the millennials?
I mean, let's be honest, it's a lot of it is the iPhone, and it is always there. And we've managed to combine something that we need for work. And I know mine's sitting right here, and miraculously I have yet to like tap it until that it just distracted me. But we have this thing that we need, like I need it for email for work. I need it to call people for directions. So we have everything we need in the same device as everything we don't need and everything that's distracting us from doing what we need to do. So like if I had a separate work phone and a phone that was just kind of my bubble pop and Netflix and social media phone, we'd be okay. But because they're all in the same thing, it's so easy. There's just this constant pull. So you're using a lot of mental energy to just tune a lot of things out. And it's constant day in and day out. And I think millennials probably are suffering from that a lot, but I think all generations are struggling with that. I don't think that one's limited to millennials. I think older generations too have become trapped in that cycle.
Absolutely, which is why my phone has to stay in my office overnight, because I realized I just needed to do that. It stays plugged in my office, and they are just, it's a struggle. So that's real.
What you gotta do. Yeah.
Yep. Well, then number 4 is also, before I do that, audience, let me toss in a question. Audience, who are some of the amazing millennials in your life? If you're listening live or on the replay, I've been talking with Kristin Weber, who's the author of the book, Adulting for Jesus. We dropped a link to Kristin's book there in the comments so that you can click on it and order it. And Kristin has been sharing with us just kind of the 4 challenges that millennials face. And the hard reality, is that a lot of the challenges that we're facing as an adult who looks at this, and I'm a Generation Xer, that a lot of these challenges, A, have come from how we've shaped the world around millennials, and B, the way that we've made the world better has made the world better, but it may not have made the world better long-term for millennials to start off with. And so it's been very thoughtful listening to you process these. So if you've got amazing millennials in your life, let's give them a shout out right now. Kristin, number 4 is the last one, and we've just got a minute or two, the endless options. How has that been a struggle for us, for millennials?
So I think it kind of ties into this term that it's called a FOMO, or fear of missing out. And so by choosing one thing, you're automatically saying no to 1,000 other things. So like when I choose a major in college, so let's say I choose nursing, I'm automatically saying no to hundreds of other majors. So I'm saying, okay, I'm going to commit my life to this field of study and this work, whatever it is. And so the trap that we get into is thinking that, am I choosing the best option, the best possible option? Well, there's no way of knowing whether you are, because I can't go and test out 300 different fields of study to know that I'm choosing the thing that's going to best suit my personality, bring me the most joy, most fulfillment, best paycheck long-term. So we're getting bogged down by all these options and stressing out, wondering if we're choosing correctly, if we're choosing the best thing, because there's so many. And then they're setting this with dating and dating apps, because when you say, I'm going to be this person's girlfriend or boyfriend, or I'm going to marry this person, you're saying no to everyone else, which that's as it should be. And that's how it's always been. But on these online things, you're getting to see everything you're saying no to. It's become almost like this catalog. And so we don't commit to any one thing because we're afraid we're going to miss out on something better that comes along. And that, I think, is what's causing a lot of the delays in some of the milestones that millennials, like we're later buying houses, we're later establishing careers, later getting married, later having kids. It's because there's this constant, like, is something better going to come along? Is something better going to come along? And that was fed a little bit by the adults in our life, even the church, saying that God has great things for you and dream big and don't settle. Don't settle. All those things all feed in, like combined with all the options. I think it was just this kind of powder keg of worldviews that just has kind of sunk in without us realizing that it was sinking in. So,
yeah.
Isn't it crazy?
As a former church staffer, I mean, I'm thinking about all the times I told people, go discover your gifts. And then people see all these spiritual gifts and they're like, Or are we sure we're the right one? Well, along those lines, as we are winding down our conversation, there are two next steps that you recommend for millennials in light of the places where they're struggling, whether they are struggling with comfort addiction, instant gratification, distractions, or endless options. One of your next steps is to get involved in a local church. And how does that help a millennial?
I think that helps because one, it helps them see the bigger picture outside themselves. And it doesn't have to be a fancy church, a perfect church. Any group of Christians who get together, read the word, worship God, baptize, do communion together, see each other outside of Sunday services, just jump in and join them on Sundays and start getting to know people, because you're going to need that support. And you need that support not just from your peers, but you need to be in community, for lack of a better phrase. That one's kind of become kind of cliche almost. Are you in community? But you need to be around believers who are not your age, don't have things in common with you outside of Jesus. Those people are going to help you grow and see that, oh, this little world that I'm living in is not the only one. And also God's grace is in their world too. I mean, we complain that millennials get a lot of flack. And I'm like, God's grace is there. But for millennials, I'm like, God's grace is with the boomer generation that we like to make fun of, with the okay boomer. Like, he's with them. His grace covers them too. So, and then also for the younger generations, for millennials to be pouring into already the younger generations, we need all ages, all backgrounds to kind of sharpen each other. And you get that through the local church. So
I love that big picture of helping to provide perspective. That's so powerful. And then the last thing, very quickly, you said to do something small to start if you're stuck. How is this helpful for millennials?
This is helpful because sometimes we just don't know where to start with something. We want to change something. And in fact, the example I use in my book is was a video that went viral of this admiral saying, if you want to change the world, make your bed in the morning, because it requires you to just get up and do something. And so if you're stuck, if you don't know what you want to, there's different like levels of stuck. Like if you're just like stuck on the couch, you're like, I need to do the dishes and this and this and this. That's like okay, just get up, wash 2 dishes. And then usually once you get going, then it's easy to keep going, but it's that initial start. But then on like those bigger things, like I hate my job. How do I get unstuck out of that? I either am not in a relationship or I'm miserable in a relationship. How do I get unstuck out of that? So it's map out a step you can take, one small step. Like whether if you hate your job, map out, can I start a community college class that will help me transition careers? Because even if I don't go through with it, at least that hope that, okay, change can happen will help get you through the day. Or with the relationship, be like, do I need to plan for that hard conversation? Or do I need to put myself out there and get on a dating app? And so it's just like, what's that one small step that I can do that can move my circumstance out of where it is?
Lovely. Well, and we've had some folks jump in for comments, and Letitia, thank you for joining us. She said that to be able to combine work with distractions, just that idea of being able to know that, hey, if we stay focused on something specific, that'll help us push out distractions. Emily, thank you for joining us. She was given the hand clap. Well, Kristin, I love everything that you shared today. And so everyone, if you're listening, I would love for you to go grab Kristin's new book, Adulting for Jesus. And the subtitle is a book about purpose, trusting God, and obviously burritos. Kristin, where can we find Adulting for Jesus at?
It is on, well, Barb, thank you for asking. It is on Amazon.com and anywhere books are sold.
Absolutely. And we dropped in a link for Amazon in the comments, and so you can grab there. And in the show notes on this post, you can also get connected with Kristin. She's got a Facebook page, and as well as she's on Instagram. Kristin, is there any final word of encouragement you would love to share with the audience about Adulting for Jesus?
Oh man, now I feel pressure to say something epic.
Right. I know, right? But something about burritos. Let's go with that.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. So just go to Chipotle, get your order, whatever your order is, and then sit down and just have a conversation with God over dinner, and just lay out what is going on in your life and heart with him, because he's a good listener. And I like to say he cares about even our most trivial adulting woes. So those things people are like, suck it up and do that. Tell it to God. And then maybe you might have to suck it up and go, take care of the problem, but tell it to God, because he really does. He does care. He is a personable God who loves you. So
I love that. I love that. Well, from one Chipotle lover to another, Kristin, thank you so much for joining us today on the Better Together Facebook Live. Friends, if you're listening, this episode is going to be here on this author page for you to listen to. You can share it with your favorite millennials. The past episodes of the Better Together Facebook Live are at barbruce.com on the blog page. And we're here every Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with fresh episodes. We're so glad that you joined us today. Thank you for the gift of your time, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.